Next up, we have Ice Beer, the founder of Geode Finance, who will show us that we can build way more than just protocols.
Hello. So I'm not going to be talking a lot. My point is very clear that I don't like a protocol-based development on top of blockchains so far. In DeFi, I find them kind of insecure, and I think we can build something very much secure than that. So right now, DeFi is in glorious days. Like not right now, it's in bear season, but last bull was pretty strong. A lot of money pouring into DeFi, and we are seeing a lot of hacks. And these hacks are not just audited protocols or anything. Audited protocols can be hacked. Audited protocols or other forked protocols who are relying on the top of the code infrastructure of other protocols can be hacked as well. So how we can solve the hacking dilemma? So you cannot build something too much centralized. You cannot rely on centralized code because it's safer, because then we are losing the glorious part of DeFi, which is it's being permissionless. Anyone can build on top of DeFi, on top of Ethereum, other chains, and deploy their own instance of protocols. So what are the causes of these problems? First of all, we have built products that are too complicated for humans to read. So you cannot just assume what the smart contract does, even though it's verified on Etherscan, right? It can be something much more different because there are ways to even trick Etherscan. You cannot make sure of what's the function's name, to be honest. That's even something. So we have built overly complicated protocols that makes things hard to verify. So you cannot just assume what is the functionality of the program, what's the functionality of the smart contract. It's hard to maintain as a developer. There are a couple of tools that are making things easier for us, but there are also a lot of missing parts in the development cycle. And it's hard to integrate. You can integrate with Uniswap, but you cannot integrate with Uniswap's all forks, because even though there are some standards on what the exchange means in terms of Uniswap version 3, version 4, whatever, it doesn't mean the same thing in, for example, Banker or other exchanges. So we can actually build something still permissionless, something that is not much complicated, and something will secure Ethereum in the on-chain level. And final thing, the current state of DeFi, it is imperative. So it's not declarative. You don't assume, you cannot understand what it's doing by just reading the documentation. You gotta make sure by reading the bytecode or smart contracts if it's open sourced. And it's very hard to even read the smart contracts, understand them, evaluate them, audit them. And it's kinda very easy to miss some of the bugs and very easy, clear points. So how we can fix them? So I'm gonna show one example on what is the problem and one that we all see every day. So this is, who knows what is this? Do you remember this screen? Do you know what is this? No? So this is the opens up this wizard. You can deploy ERC 721.1155 ERC20 as well, a token, and you can actually customize it, which is very good because you might want these little new flashy features in your ERC20, but when this happens too. So anyone can create an ERC20, and anyone can try to scam you on Etherscan as well. There's no way to make sure that all of these ERC20s are implemented correctly or forked correctly from the OpenZeppelin's website, even though there's a website for it. You can just change the smart contracts and try to hack other people. So we are, at this point, we are back to square one. It's a permissionless. Anyone can deploy a smart contract on Ethereum, but it is very complicated. So ones that have no clue on how to implement smart contracts shouldn't probably deploying them. Okay. And this is the other part of the problem. We are just forking a lot of protocols. Uniswap forked over 500 times, Compound forked over 100 times, and almost same as well. So there's a lot of forked protocols. There's a lot of money that is bound to the same code without being bound to the same smart contract infrastructure. So even Uniswap is being hacked. They cannot stop the other smart contracts who are using Uniswap forked version. So you have one chance. You can either use Uniswap or there is really no interest in using a Uniswap fork because if it's hacked, then it's probably much more hard to overcome its burden rather than Uniswap. And that happens. So there is a protocol on Avalanche called Stars Arena, which is a forked version of Frantech. It got hacked, but Frantech didn't got hacked because even though it seems like it is the fork of Frantech, Stars Arena actually wasn't. They changed the code, so they made it vulnerable. And there's no way to check for an everyday user. There's no way to check if Stars Arena is truly as secure as the fork it got. It got them from Frantech. And to be honest, it's a nightmare. I wouldn't want to be in the war room trying to fix this stuff. It's really hard because it's really not that maintainable to work with any forks, and it's not that as secure as well. So the idea is how we can make DeFi declarative, how we can say, hey, here is a code, and we know what it's doing. We don't need to check it every time it's used, but it's not the same as ERC20. You cannot use all the ERC20s. Some can trick you to stealing other ERC20s in your wallet, or some protocols can try to use ERC20s to trick their users and steal their money as well. So you cannot use all the ERC20s, but if we could make ERC20 declarative, if we could say this token just transfers magic internet money around, and this is how you do it, then it would be declarative. We wouldn't need to check the bytecode for every ERC20, and we wouldn't need to check the smart contracts in these declarative standards. So yeah, I think there are a lot of useful stuff that we can make use of in Ethereum, because it's a settlement layer. You can settle your declarative sentences as smart contracts and then reuse them. You can just say, here is ERC20, here what it's doing, and you don't need to change it, just fork it and have a verifiable fork of ERC20. So this seems like verifiable forks, which is very narrow scoped research area in infrastructures part of smart contracts. So you can have verifiable forks. What's the usefulness in that? How important it is that it is declarative? So this is what it comes down to. You can think of it like open Zeppelin, but on chain. You can check the boxes. You can say, I want my ERC20 to have voting mechanism. I want my ERC20 to have, I don't know, rebalancing, because its value changes over time. But rather than implementing that functionalities in your ERC20, you can just use OpenZeppelin's ERC20. But as a user, I'm not going to be sure that you use OpenZeppelin's ERC20 in a correct way and you didn't change anything. So because of that, we have been working on Onchain standards, which means that you can deploy a package distributor, and that package distributor can maintain the versions, different versions of, Open Zeppelin just announced their version 5, for example. They can just update the ERC20 standard to version 5, and the end user, I'm going to show this part, end user can deploy. So it's hard to read it, but it says deploy here. So end user can deploy an ERC20, and with just one click and some modifications that is handled by the infrastructure party, you can have your own instance that is verifiable as ERC20, that is 100% safe to use because it's approved by Open Zeppelin. So this is one thing. It creates a standard. So instead of, for example, in this example, let's go back there. In this example, if we knew what are the correct ERC20 version provided by Open Zeppelin, if we keep track of the correctly implemented ERC20s in just one smart contract, which is package distributor, we don't need to see these because these are created by other people, or this is not really well fit for ERC20 standards because it allows other people to send money to you without their permission. So this is not actually an ERC20, it just acts like ERC20, and there's no way to verify it other than having on-chain standards. Having that, we have an ERC20 model, and we can verify it because it's provided by an infrastructure provider like Open Zeppelin, on-chain, verifiable. So it's that easy. We can remove all these transactions, and it would just have four real transactions in this 21 transaction list, which is more than like a lot for everyday user. You wouldn't find your own address. These are all phishing addresses. So we can just remove those by having an on-chain ERC20 standard. So let's continue. Yeah, so it's now safe to assume. So this is safe to assume, which kind of contradicts with do your own research. One of the most said sentences in DeFi. You don't need to do your own research in these ERC20s because it's deployed by Open Zeppelin, just used by the end user and deployed by the developer who did nothing rather than just simply using the wizard here. Yeah. So that's it. Basically, updating those, one other thing is that how you would make sure that you can update ERC20 standard, for example. There are a lot of different standards. I think EIPs, there are a lot of 5,000, like maybe more than 5,000 EIPs, I guess, and we could have had on-chain standards. It's too late for ERC20 because it's well distributed. A lot of people are using ERC20, and it's not really good for the chain itself to have on-chain standards because you are enforcing them or you are just ignoring the other parts, which disturbs its permissionlessness. But other than that, it makes things a lot safer, and I have something to say about that. So I think the permissionless part of Ethereum is very important for developers, to anyone to be able to implement anything they want that is verifiable, that makes sense to have on-chain. But I also think it's very important for end user to not actually need to know the blockchain is being used. So you can just use blockchain to have transferable or verifiable assets or information on-chain, but you don't need to have the whole permissionless development cycle because you can just use on-chain verifiable standards instead of using not verifiable standards like Open Zeppelin ERC20. So that's it. So there is one little update, limited upgradable proxy standard. So this is one thing that we have been implementing in our infrastructure. So Geode Finance, which I am the co-founder of, we have built a staking infrastructure building on top of on-chain verifiable standards. We have built our customizable staking standard, and then we have built staking pools on top of that. And in the meantime, we have found something called limited upgradable proxy standard, which means, basically, in any upgradability standard, you can just upgrade it if you are the owner, or you can just say there's no owner and it might become unupgradable. But with limited upgradable proxy, let's say you have been using Zeppelin ERC20. I know I used the ERC20 example a lot, but I think it's very useful in that context. You can just update your ERC20 without actually disturbing its functionality. So you can just say, there's a new version on Zeppelin, and I want to use that because it's safer, there's more functionalities, and you can just upgrade it by just calling one function, by just one click, and you would have the new version. So basically, Onchain standards provide us a very meaningful way to verify which standards are being used. This is kind of different than other on-chain standard proposals which try to introduce an interface to the smart contracts. Instead of doing that, we have verifiable centralized smart contract infrastructure that is publishing the code and other parties utilizing it. So yeah, in that way we can have much more useful standards. And I'm gonna just give you guys 2 examples, maybe 4, and then let's discuss some concerns about this. So some existing examples. Everyone knows that in Uniswap, you have permissionless exchanging pools. You know, you can just exchange 2 tokens, but you can also deploy one of these staking pools. Sorry, one of these exchange pools, decentralized exchange pools. So you can deploy one liquidity pool for your own token. And in the meantime, you're actually declaring that. It's very declarative. I'm using Uniswap pricing algorithm for my token. So you don't need to check every Uniswap pool because they are all using the same algorithm. Its bytecode, its code will be the same. So Uniswap is a very good example of on-chain standard. It creates liquidity standards across all the liquidity pools. You can just fork one of them without actually forking, and you can verify that you are using Uniswap. But it actually misses one point. It's not upgradable. They're introducing different versions. But if you had an on-chain standard, it would be upgradable, like Jesis Safe. So Jesis Safe is a multi-sig platform, which means we can create a wallet which is maintained by 4 people, and it would be much more secure because I can lose my keys, but let's say we are 4 friends, 3 of them needed for the signature, and that would be enough. So having a multi-sig is very useful, but still there are some stuff to improve, even within the Jesis Safe. So you are not able to just release one version and get rid of it. You can improve it by having this little check, and which means you are using the latest version in Jesis Safe, and I don't need to check if it's Jesis Safe. I can just check its code verifiable on-chain standard that's provided by Genesis for multi-sigs. So it's that easy. You can have a liquidity pool standard. You can have a multi-sig standard, but if those are stored in on-chain proxies, then everybody can use them, utilize them, and it would be actually much more permissionless while keeping the safety in constraints. So yeah, I think some suggestion, very easy suggestion would be utilizing ERC20 as an on-chain standard and just making sure that everybody is fulfilling the on-chain standard requirements. You can distribute more like different standards too. You can say ERC20 DAO standard, ERC20, I don't know, rebasing standard. So there can be multiple standards, but we can just eliminate other smart contracts that do not verifiably following these standards. It's hard, like it's kind of late for ERC20, but we can have a DAO standard which is actually being provided by other protocols like Aragon. So Aragon is a very useful tool You can actually verify if you have an Aragon DAO that is deployed by other teams by utilizing the Aragon's infrastructure. So it's actually useful, which could be a suggestion, could be already existing. I'm not sure about that, but that can be something that is very important for DAO development. And finally, we are suggesting on-chain staking pool standards, which means we will be developing a staking pool and we will be putting it on-chain, but we will not use it. We will just distribute it, upgrade it, maintain it, and basically just distribute the software, which is the smart contract infrastructure, on-chain, instead of just publishing it on GitHub. And you will be able to verifiably upgrade your features and security modules without disrupting the functionality of your infrastructure as the end user. So I think that's it. Yeah, I just want to talk about the concerns. So one concern is that if everybody is using the same code and if there's a bug in that, it makes things much more complicated for the settlement layer, because we have seen a hard fork after the DAO exploits, and this is much more likely if we convert all ERC20s to rely on the same ERC20 code. That will expose a lot of tail risk to the settlement layer. So it's really, really important to make sure that your developer experience is allowed, so your modules are secure, and you have modules which you can actually get audited. So instead of having all the ERC20s being audited all the time, which is not the dream for the auditors, I know that, but we can just audit this one instance and then get rid of the whole auditing process. But if we need to audit more, we can just keep auditing the same code, which would make things a lot more safer. But like I said, in the worst case scenario, it would expose the settlement. I cannot stress this enough. It would expose the settlement layer to an enormous tail risk, like having a monopoly on staking pools, something like that. It would be the same level of tail risk. Yeah, so it would be nuclear if it got hacked, basically. Yeah, I think that's it. So basically, I've talked about the on-chain standards, which is a new, fresh look to the Ethereum improvement proposals. So instead of having a GitHub repository, why don't we have improvement proposals on chain and make them verifiable? That's the whole point. Well, thanks a lot.
Questions? Oh, then I have a question. So you mentioned staking pools. So can you go a little bit deeper there?
Yeah, so right now, there are some staking pools which are just relying on one asset. So you can have Ether and mint STETH, for example, or RETH in Rocket Pool's case. What we are doing is we are taking the staking pools and exhaustively implemented all functionality, which basically says you can build anything with any different functionality which is around, like for example, yield redistribution. You can say, instead of my yield that I keep on my token goes to this address, I want to use a Yarn vault, for example. So we have all this functionality implemented in a library, and we are releasing that library. We are releasing the staking library very soon. So by using this staking library, you can create your own staking pool, which is like creating your own liquidity pool on Uniswap. By using Geode Finance, you can create your own staking pool. And that staking pool can be like Lido. It just mints you some tokens. And it can be like Rocket Pool, for example. You can have node operator bubbles, etc. So networks. The idea is that if anyone can have the ability to stake without utilizing a third party, by utilizing an on-chain standard, then we don't need to have these giant monopolies of staking pools. So that's the idea. You can create your own staking pools and just start validating it by a delegation. You can use a third party. So you don't need to use Lido or other third parties that are intermediaries between stakers and node operators.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions? No? Then let's thank Icebear again. So see you after a 5-minute break.